My name is Lisa Ori, and I am a PhD student at the University of Washington. On behalf of my research team, I will present our paper, Designing for Speech Practice Systems: How do User-Controlled Voice Manipulation and Model Speakers Impact Self-Perceptions of Voice? HCI researchers have developed systems that assist users with speech practice. These systems typically provide fixed solutions to improve the user's speech, which might enforce the idea that the user must speak in the recommended way to be a good speaker. It's possible that the recommended way discourages speakers from speaking in their natural voice. Being unable to speak in a natural voice can negatively affect a speaker's self-perceptions of their speaking abilities, which can impact their speech performance. Oftentimes, people with higher pitch voices are criticized for sounding unprofessional and are pressured to emulate people with low pitch voices, which tend to be exemplified as authoritative speakers. These stereotypes are usually tied to gender, as high-pitched voices are referred to as feminine and low-pitched voices are thought of as masculine. Especially for quote-unquote feminine speakers, which may be common among women, self-perception is an important factor that influences speech performance. In this study, we aim to understand how speech practice techniques supported by technology can impact self-perceptions of speakers. We had 18 participants, 1 identified as non-binary and 17 identified as women. We intentionally recruited women and gender minorities who may have vocal traits that are not typically appreciated in public speaking. The first part of the study was an experiment in which participants practiced their speeches and then self-assessed their speeches. The second part was interviews, which was aimed for us to understand the participants' thought processes during the experiment and other experiences tied to their voices. In the experiment, the participants used 2 techniques while practicing speeches using given scripts. The first is voice manipulation using a software called Praat. After recording their speech, the recording was inputted into Praat, which presented visualizations of the recording's pitch and duration. Using the visualizations, participants selected specific points in their speech to manipulate and adjusted the pitch values and duration of the inputted recording. Immediately after the manipulations, Praat's interface visually reflected the changes, and participants could listen to the manipulated versions of their voices. The second technique is listening to recordings of model public speakers. We provided participants with a speech script and an audio of a speaker delivering the same script. Participants could refer to the audio of the model speaker to practice their speech. Participants used either, none, or both of these 2 techniques in the experiment. In other words, they tested 4 conditions, where in each condition they were given a new script. Before and after each condition was tested, the participants recorded themselves speaking and self-assessed their performance based on the recording. They evaluated their confidence in their voice, satisfaction with their voice, perceived ability to communicate, and perceived ability to self-express. These evaluations were intended for us to understand how much their self-perceptions changed due to the tested condition. Here are the results of our experiment. There was a significant increase in the confidence in the tone of voice when participants listened to model speakers. The most number of participants referred to the tone of the model speakers when discussing what they liked or didn't like about the speakers. We infer that because the participants paid attention to the model speaker's tone, they experienced the most growth in confidence in their own tone. There was also a trend for the perceived ability to self-express to increase after using voice manipulation without listening to model speakers. One possible explanation for this trend may be that while using voice manipulation, the participants could choose whether or not to manipulate their pitch or duration. In the case that they didn't want to manipulate pitch or duration, they could choose to avoid any manipulation that might make their voices seem less like themselves. Next, here are 3 findings from our interview analysis. First, how similar the model speaker's voice was to the participant's voice affected how much participants referred to the model speakers during speech practice. The quote on the slide implies that if the participants had identified with the model speaker, they could have had a greater appreciation for the speaker and better learned speaking skills from them. Second, listening to the manipulated versions of their voices helped participants understand how they would sound when they changed their voices in real life. Participants said that the immediate auditory feedback helped them make decisions about how to improve their speech. The quote in the middle explains that the feedback instilled the participants with a confidence that their voice had the capacity to sound better. Third, participants discussed gender in the context of voice, including stereotypes that are associated with high-pitched voices, which tend to be those of women. The quote on the right explains the social pressure to emulate low voices, typically presented among men, and the failure to actively lower voices, leading to exclusion from speaking in professional settings. Please refer to our paper to read more about other themes we analyzed from the interviews, including the limitations of voice manipulation and the participants' experiences with comparing their own voices to those of the model speakers. Based on our findings, we created design implications for speech practice systems to support users with improving their self-perceptions of voice. First, users should be able to manipulate their voices freely to explore the various ways their voices can sound. Listening to the manipulated voice would be more effective with the flexibility to select vocal parameters for manipulation and allowing users to manually manipulate those parameters, rather than having the system make automatic manipulations. Second, users should listen to model speakers that have similar vocal qualities of the user and those that fit well with the context of the user's speech. The system should offer a collection of audio model speakers that is diverse and use non-cis-sexist language when referring to voice types. Third, users should be able to incorporate their individual note-taking methods to annotate their speech scripts. Note-taking could remind themselves of, for example, the speed at which the model speaker spoke, or how the manipulated version of their own voices sounded. Because voice is such a unique and personal part of each of us, we encourage future work to envision other design implications for speech practice systems that can tailor to the individual's experiences, needs, and identities. We also hope that the research community will place more emphasis on supporting individuals with improving their self-perceptions. Thank you very much.